Your sister's graduation is more important than your surgery. That's what my mother said to me, out loud, like it made perfect sense. My name is Olivia, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because that day, I realized something brutal. I wasn't a daughter. I was an afterthought. A burden. A shadow they never expected to shine. I was 17 when the pain in my abdomen became too sharp to ignore. At first, they said it was stress. Then gas. Then probably nothing. I Googled symptoms at night with shaky hands and a pit in my stomach. Turns out it was something. A ruptured ovarian cyst. I needed outpatient surgery. Not life-threatening, but urgent enough to be scheduled. The doctors explained it clearly. Rest was critical. Delaying it might risk further damage. My pre-op appointment was set. I was scared but relieved. And then Jessica's graduation landed on the same day. Jessica, my older sister. The family crown jewel. Honor roll. Cheer captain. Future veterinarian/influencer, depending on the week. Mom didn't ask how I felt. She didn't even pretend to weigh both events. "We'll have to cancel your appointment," she said while picking out Jessica's dress. "We can't be in two places at once, and your sister only graduates high school once. We've invited everyone. It would be selfish to make this about you right now." I didn't say anything. Because what do you say to that? What do you say when your mother shrugs off your medical needs like they're an inconvenience to her Instagram plans? I stayed home that day. In pain. Alone. While the rest of them smiled in family photos with gold balloons and "so proud of you, Jessica" signs. The pain was unbearable. But it was nothing compared to what settled into my chest. I looked at those pictures and realized something permanent. I was not important. Not to them. Not when it counted. I went to the hospital 3 days later by myself. Told them I missed my pre-op because of a family emergency. They rescheduled. I took the bus. Sat through the pain in a cold waiting room. Held my own hand when they inserted the 4. Signed the consent form alone. The nurse asked me, "Is someone coming to pick you up?" I said, "No. It's just me." She frowned. "You can't leave alone after anesthesia." So I waited. 6 extra hours. Until the meds wore off enough to walk straight. Then I took a cab back home. No one asked how it went. They were too busy posting Jessica's graduation video again, this time with filters and Taylor Swift lyrics. I healed slowly, physically, emotionally. Alone. That day became the blueprint for the years that followed. My pain didn't matter. My milestones didn't matter. If it didn't involve Jessica, it was an afterthought. And I learned to stop asking for space. But I didn't stop dreaming. And I never forgot. Because years later, when Jessica proudly announced her new hospital job, she had no idea that the chief of surgery she'd be answering to was the girl they left behind. Growing up, I used to wonder what it felt like to be someone worth celebrating. Not just tolerated. Not just allowed in the room. Celebrated. In our house, that person was Jessica. Always Jessica. She was the sun, and we were all expected to orbit her. When I got a 98 on my math exam, Mom said, "Why not 100? When Jessica got an 85, there was a party because math isn't her strength, but she tried. I learned quickly. Trying wasn't enough for me. Excellence wasn't enough either. Because no one notices the wallpaper when they're obsessed with the chandelier. Jessica got a new dress every semester. Her own room, full of fairy lights, posters, designer perfumes. I got her old books and a twin mattress on the floor. She got violin lessons, ballet classes, debate tournaments. I got permission to walk home if I was done being dramatic. When I got strep throat at 10, I stayed in my room for 2 days. Mom left soup outside the door, like I was contagious to her love. But when Jessica twisted her ankle during cheer practice, the entire family canceled weekend plans. She cried once about a boy breaking up with her. My mother held her in bed all night like she'd lost a limb. When I cried after not being invited to a single birthday party in 6th grade, my mother said, "Well, maybe if you smiled more, people would like you." I stopped crying after that. Eventually, I stopped speaking much at all. I became quiet. Invisible. A ghost in the house built for her. And while everyone looked at Jessica and saw a star, I looked at textbooks. Science books. anatomy guides, anything that made sense, because nothing else around me did. When I was 13, I spent a month building a heart valve model out of clay and wires. I even wrote a paper explaining how it worked. My biology teacher pulled me aside after class. "This is exceptional," she said. "You ever thought about medicine?" I had. Every night. In secret. But I didn't say that. I just shrugged. "Doesn't matter. My mom wants Jessica to be the doctor." She frowned. "With your mind? Your focus? You'd make a brilliant surgeon." That word lit something in me. Surgeon. Precise. Sharp. Necessary. Not decorative. Not replaceable. Not invisible. That night, while everyone was watching Jessica's latest talent show routine, I opened the laptop in our shared study room and searched. How to become a surgeon with no money, no support, and no one who believes in you. The answers weren't encouraging, but they were clear, and I followed them like a lifeline. Scholarships, community college, hospital volunteer work, a stack of free online prep guides printed on library paper. I didn't tell anyone, especially not Jessica, because I knew the minute she found out I wanted to be something real, she'd either take it or ruin it. I stopped asking to be seen, and instead, I learned how to survive in the dark. Until one day, I decided I wouldn't live in the shadows anymore. I'd become the light they never expected. Hunger makes you creative. Not just the hunger for food, though I knew that one well during my community college days, but the hunger to become, to grow, to prove, if only to yourself, that you're not the nothing they made you feel like. That hunger sat with me. Every day I studied under flickering library lights after working 5-hour shifts bussing tables. It burned in my chest when I opened emails that started with "We're pleased to inform you," and had no one to tell. Because in my family, success only counted if Jessica achieved it. The day I got into pre-med at a top university, I sat on a bench outside the admissions office and cried quietly. Not out of joy. Out of exhaustion. No one knew what it took to get there. No one asked. No one cared. Mom texted me that day asking if I could Venmo your sister $40. She forgot her wallet again. I sent it, and never mentioned where I was. By then, I'd stopped trying to earn their recognition. They gave Jessica praise for showing up. I'd have to save lives to earn a nod. So I stopped chasing approval and started chasing skill. I moved through school like a shadow with a scalpel. I said yes to every anatomy lab, every 4 a.m. ER rotation, every coffee-fueled overnight shift that made other students complain. Because I wasn't just learning how to heal others. I was learning how to survive myself. There were nights I came home to an empty dorm, legs shaking from standing 12 hours straight, and stared at the ceiling wondering if it was all worth it. No support. No birthday calls. No "we're proud of you" texts. Jessica? She got a surprise car for her 21st. Me? I got silence. But then I met Dr. Leem, trauma surgeon, impossible to impress, feared by most students. He saw me once in a skills lab, stitching faster than anyone in the group. He paused behind me, said, "You've got blade precision. You planning surgery?" I hesitated. "If I make it that far." He narrowed his eyes. "You'll make it. You're a scalpel in a world of dull blades. Keep cutting." That was the first time anyone in the medical field spoke to me like I belonged. So I kept cutting. I kept rising. The hunger never left, but I learned to feed it with discipline, not desperation. And as I progressed, something strange happened. I no longer needed them. Not their permission. Not their money. Not their approval. My name went up on research papers. I became a resident in the same hospital Jessica followed online for years, the one she called her dream job. The irony? She didn't know I was already there. Already rising. Already seen. The only difference now? She was walking in with a paper badge. And I was walking in with power. It started with a post. Jessica, draped in hospital blue scrubs she hadn't earned yet, smiling with her ID badge, standing outside a building that had already memorized my footsteps. So excited to announce I've officially joined my dream hospital. Can't wait to start this next chapter. #future hero, #hospital babe. She tagged our mom. She tagged 20 friends. She didn't tag me. Not that I expected her to. But the timing stung. I had just wrapped a grueling overnight rotation that ended with a 6 a.m. trauma call, followed by an administrative board meeting where I was formally introduced as the incoming chief of surgery. Years of work. Training. Nights I cried over bloodstains on my sneakers. No post. And she was being congratulated for showing up. The comments rolled in. "You're going to save so many lives. So proud of you, Jess. Heart sisters both in medicine. What a powerhouse family." That last one made me laugh. They didn't even know. Because Jessica had never once mentioned me. She told people I worked in admin stuff. That I did something with charts. Let her talk. I didn't care anymore. Then the phone rang.
Mom.
I let it go to voicemail. I listened later, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear her voice without hearing her voice. "Hi, Olivia. Just wanted to let you know your sister got hired at the hospital. Isn't that amazing? She's finally catching up to you. Maybe you two will bump into each other. Anyway, it's nice to see her chasing your dream."
I replayed that line.
Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything. Your dream. They never asked what my dreams were. They just watched me build them, then handed them to Jessica like party favors. But something had shifted. I wasn't threatened. I wasn't bitter. I was ready. Because in 2 weeks, Jessica would walk into orientation at my hospital, grinning, glowing, proud to be part of the team. And she'd have no idea who she'd be reporting to. I prepped my welcome speech carefully. Professional. Neutral. Stern but inspiring. I made no changes to the list of new hires. I didn't highlight her name. I didn't flag her. Because I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of thinking this was about revenge. This wasn't about revenge. This was about recognition. Not from her. Not from Mom. Not from the people who only applauded when I was quiet. It was about walking into the room, fully, finally, and knowing no one could deny who I'd become. My badge didn't say Jessica's sister. It said Dr. Olivia Hart, MD, Chief of Surgery. The girl they left behind? She wasn't coming to orientation. The woman they ignored? She was already running it. Orientation morning. I stood at the front of the hospital's grand lecture hall, white coat crisp, name badge gleaming. Dr. Olivia Hart, Chief of Surgery. The room buzzed with nervous energy, 20 new hires, eyes wide, voices low. Some held clipboards, others adjusted their scrubs like armor. Jessica walked in 5 minutes late, giggling with another girl. She didn't see me at first. She was too busy making an entrance, the same way she always did at home. As if the room existed to celebrate her arrival. She picked a seat in the 3rd row and sat, crossing her legs like she owned the place. And then I stepped up to the podium. The room settled immediately. Phones disappeared. Chairs straightened. Jessica looked up. Her mouth didn't fall open, but her eyes did. That flicker of recognition. That sudden, brutal, paralyzing stillness. I could feel it, not just in her, in everyone. The subtle shift in energy when the one person you dismissed walks in as the authority. I kept my expression neutral. My voice calm. "Welcome to Hart Memorial Hospital," I began, letting the irony of my last name settle quietly over the room. "You've been selected not just for your credentials, but for your potential. Here, we don't reward ego. We reward excellence." Jessica's hands gripped the sides of her chair. I didn't look at her. I addressed them all equally. "The rotation program will be rigorous. You'll be pushed, emotionally, mentally, physically. Some of you will grow. Some of you will break. And that's okay. What matters is that you show up with respect. For your patients, your peers, and this profession." I paused for effect, scanning the room, stopping only for a heartbeat longer where she sat. This isn't just medicine. It's a battlefield of lives. And the minute you make it about yourself, you've already lost. A few students scribbled notes. Jessica didn't move. Her face had flushed a soft pink. Her smile, gone. Her shoulders, tight. I wrapped up the speech, handed the floor to the training coordinator, and walked off stage to light applause. Backstage, I stood by the supply cabinet and breathed deeply. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't angry. I was in control. She followed me. I heard her footsteps long before she spoke. "Olivia," she said softly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I turned slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. "I didn't think it mattered," I replied. "Your chief?" she asked, like the word was choking her. I nodded. "You knew I was coming here?" "Yes." "And you didn't say anything?" I tilted my head. Would it have changed anything? She didn't answer. So I walked past her, calm and clean. Not a trace of revenge in my step. Only purpose. Because I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to lead. And no matter what Jessica expected when she walked into that hospital, she wasn't the main character anymore. Hospitals are honest places. You can't fake competence in a trauma bay. You can't charm your way through a bleeder. And you can't cry your way out of a botched procedure checklist, not when lives are on the line. Jessica learned that quickly. The week after orientation, she started her rounds. Late to shift. Slow on charting. Always one step behind. She looked like a little girl playing dress-up in scrubs. But unlike home, this place didn't coddle her. Her peers advanced without her. Nurses raised eyebrows. Attendings stopped giving her chances. And me? I never lifted a finger. I didn't protect her. I didn't punish her. I let the system, the one I survived to master, do what it does best. Reveal. On Thursday, she missed a sterile protocol during pre-op prep. The OR nurse flagged it. I reviewed the report personally. No bias.
Just facts.
I signed the remediation notice and moved on. That afternoon, I got the text. From Mom. "Why are you being so cold to your sister? She needs support, not judgment." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed just one sentence. "The same way you were when I needed you." She didn't reply. Neither did I. 2 days later, Jessica cornered me outside the break room, eyes glossy, voice trembling. "This is impossible," she said. "Everyone treats me like I don't belong here." I sipped my coffee. "Do you?" Her face dropped. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, "this place doesn't care about last names. Or family trees. Or high school crowns. It only cares if you show up, ready or not." She blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. Then she asked the question she'd clearly been holding for days. "Why didn't you tell me you were chief?" I met her eyes. And for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance or entitlement. I saw confusion. Maybe even regret. But regret isn't redemption. And it's not responsibility. So I said the truth. "You didn't ask." She didn't respond. Just stood there like she'd swallowed a scalpel. I left her there, same as I found her, pretending she was the star. But this wasn't a talent show. This was my world. And she'd finally entered it, without a script. Later that night, a nurse in the ER said to me, "Your sister's struggling. You gonna step in?" I shook my head. "She'll either rise," I said, "or she won't." But no one handed me a ladder. Because collapse isn't cruelty. It's gravity. And for once, I wasn't breaking the fall. Winning wasn't the moment I stood in front of Jessica at orientation. It wasn't seeing her stumble on rounds or watching her shrink under pressure. It was the moment I looked in the mirror and no longer saw someone waiting to be chosen. I was done waiting. I had become someone I respected, someone I trusted. Not because I'd risen to chief, not because I'd survived my family, but because I had stopped letting them define who I was. That kind of clarity doesn't come with a job title. It comes with boundaries. I started building the kind of environment I once prayed for, not for myself, but for the next girl who walked in quiet and underestimated. I created a mentorship program for female residents, especially the ones who didn't come from private schools or picture-perfect families. Girls like me. One of them, Naomi, reminded me of myself so much it hurt.
Always first to arrive. Always last to speak.
One day, I caught her apologizing during rounds for knowing the right answer. I pulled her aside and said, "Don't you ever say sorry for being prepared." She nodded, tearful. "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong here." I leaned in. "Then carve your space until it fits you." That's the thing about ghosts. We learn how to haunt without being seen. But we also learn how to rebuild. and I was rebuilding. Every day. With every chart I signed. Every surgery I led. Every resident I trained. Even Jessica, who had been moved to general rotation after too many flagged incidents, was slowly beginning to understand the weight of the job and the burden of being unprepared. She didn't speak to me much anymore. She didn't look me in the eye. But she didn't fake smiles either. And that silence? I respected it more than any apology she could force out. Because not everyone deserves redemption in your story. Some people are just chapters. Unfinished. Unfolded. And best left where they belong, behind you. One afternoon, as I finished a successful liver transplant, a young nurse pulled me aside. "I know you probably hear this a lot," she said, "but thank you. You don't treat us like we're invisible." That word, invisible, hit something deep, because I had lived there for years. "You're not invisible," I told her. "You just haven't been seen by the right eyes yet." She smiled, but I didn't, because I wasn't being poetic. I was telling her the truth. It took me almost my entire life to find the right eyes. So I became them for someone else. I never mentioned my family during staff events. Never posted about my achievements. Never sought the praise I once begged for. Because now, I didn't need it. Recognition is loud when it comes from within. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a surgeon, a mentor, a leader. Not in their story. In mine. The invitation wasn't sent to my family. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. The hospital was hosting a ceremony to honor leadership in medicine, an award given once a year by the board to a department head who had not only led with excellence, but transformed the team around them. They chose me, Dr. Olivia Hart, Chief of Surgery. First woman under 35 to receive the award. First from my background. First whose name had once meant nothing to the people clapping now. The stage lights were hot but soft. The chairs were full. I could see some of my residents beaming, nurses in the back giving me thumbs up. And then, like a ghost from a former life, I saw her. My mother, seated in the second row, dressed like this was a wedding, smiling tightly, like she had been invited all along. She hadn't. Neither had Jessica, who sat next to her, eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't flinch, not even when our eyes met. Not even when she gave me that familiar look that used to mean, "Come here, be small, make it about us." Because I wasn't hers anymore. I stepped onto the stage, took the glass plaque in my hand, thanked the board, thanked the staff, thanked my team. I spoke about hard work, about resilience, about systems that reward noise instead of impact. And then I paused. People often ask me what pushed me to succeed. The answer's simple: silence. The room leaned in. For a long time, I lived in silence. At home. At school. Even during my own surgery. I wasn't seen. I wasn't heard. But silence became my greatest motivator. I looked out into the room. Past the board members. Past the camera crew. Right through my mother. Because when no one speaks for you, you learn to speak for yourself. Applause thundered through the room. Jessica didn't look up. My mother's smile had vanished. I stepped down from the stage slowly, plaque in hand, head high. Outside, as the crowd broke into photos and handshakes, a reporter caught up to me. "Dr. Hart," she said breathlessly, "you've become one of the youngest leaders in hospital history. What drove you?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Pain," I said softly. "And purpose." They underestimated the wrong girl. She laughed. "And what would you say to anyone who's ever been dismissed?" I didn't hesitate. Turn the silence into strategy. Let the room go quiet, and then walk in like you own it. She nodded, scribbling notes. I turned back toward the hospital, toward my life, toward the world I built. Behind me, my mother and Jessica stood by the exit, watching. They didn't call out. They didn't follow. And I didn't turn around, because they already heard everything they needed to. They said her graduation was more important than my surgery. So I made sure my name would be the one carved on the wall. When I walked into that room as chief of surgery, the silence wasn't revenge. It was recognition. Because I didn't just survive. I became the reason the room went silent.